It's time to join Montana's very own and your voice for agriculture, Talkin' Ag Lane Nordland, for today's LaneCast.
All righty, everyone. Welcome back to yet again another conversation here on the LaneCast Ag podcast in conjunction, of course, with the Western Ag Network. And as we come into today's conversation, we will be discussing more and more about what is important for farmers and ranchers out in rural America. And our topic of conversation today will center around succession planning, estate planning, and what farmers and ranchers really need to be aware of. It's not just let's make a will and hope everything plays out right after mom and dad are gone. And our program today is brought to you by Bank of the Rockies. They of course, are the oldest bank in Montana, starting back in 1883. Bank of the Rockies has been built on a foundation of integrity, consistency, dedication, and respect for the people and communities they serve. Come meet the folks at the Bank of the Rockies in White Sulphur Springs, Helena, Livingston, Lewistown, Immigrant, Clyde Park, and Bozeman to help with your banking needs today. Well, as we jump into this conversation today, I'm excited to be joined by two individuals that discuss and help farmers and ranchers on these important subjects when we look at planning for the future. First off, I'm going to introduce Dr. Gary Brester. Of course, he's Professor Emeritus there from the Department of Agricultural Economics and Economics at Montana State University, raised there on an irrigated sugar beet and malting barley farm there near Laurel. He will be discussing these important topics with us today. And also Grant Gattis. He's also joining us from Bozeman today, and he provides specialized consulting, taxation, and advisory services for businesses within agriculture, manufacturing, and real estate industries for Pinion. So as we get ready for this today, I know it's snowing here up in north central Montana, and Dr. Brester mentioned he couldn't tee off this morning there at the country club because of that snow. But I guess overall, gentlemen, how are things going here today, Dr. Brester? I'll start with you.
Well, it's snowing and I can't play golf. So, that tells you all you need to know. So, but it's been kind of a weird fall here, Grant. I hope you don't get used to this. I know you're new to the area, but last year it was minus 40, I think, this week or something like that. So this is not normal, but I have been able to, if you're hardy enough, I've been able to get out and play a little golf this past month. So.
Yeah, Dr. Brester, that's exactly what everyone's been telling me is don't get used to this. And I was getting a little bit nervous that Bridger Bowl wasn't going to open, but it looks like they opened, and been watching some of their videos. So great to see that.
Well, before we jump into this, Grant, I'll start with you. Maybe talk about Pinion. That may be a new name for farmers and ranchers out in the countryside, but there's a lot of familiar faces that are a part of Pinion, and also just maybe expand more on your role there with Pinion.
Certainly. So Pinion is new to Montana, but came to Montana through the merger with Anderson-Zermelen. So about 10 years or so, as a firm, we looked and realized that we had a lot of a focus in food and agriculture, and really made that our prime driver of this is where we want to focus our business, and being in a position to help clients and advise from policy to plate. So have folks in DC helping with various federal policies, and then working through the supply chain of producers, ag equipment retailers, and various production services, getting food all the way to the plate is really where we are. And so Montana was another big food and ag state that we wanted to participate in, and so fortunately had the opportunity to bring in our friends from Anderson-Zermelen January 1st, and been a great partnership thus far.
Well, again, thanks for joining us here today. And that weather in Bozeman, I always joke when I never knew that snow fell straight down until I went to school in Bozeman. I always thought it just came in at an angle, but it was just so wonderful the first time that I saw snow piling up on a fence post. I thought I was truly in a winter wonderland. And But when the wind does decide to blow there, it can be wicked.
Lane, I had a friend from Gillette, Wyoming, a bank president down there who moved to Bozeman and said until he moved to Montana, to Bozeman, he never knew that snow could pile up on fence posts from down to that Gillette country. So you're not the only one to have noticed that.
Well, it's a many first for so many of us when we go to school down there in Bozeman. And Dr. Brester, with yourself, of course, so you are emeritus status there with the economics department. But let's talk a little more about your background and then why maybe you're looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah. Well, first of all, my favorite subject is me, so I enjoy visiting. But yeah, I retired a few years from Montana State. I was an ag econ professor here for 25 years, and 7 or 8 years before that at Kansas State University. But I got my undergraduate and master's degree here, so I've been around the area for quite a while. And as you mentioned, I am from Laurel, where my brother still farms. And I'm sort of involved with the operation. I get in the way, which is what really college professors who retire do. We just get in the way of other people. And you mentioned that I help farmers and ranchers. I think if you ask most people, I just happen to ask a lot of uncomfortable questions of farmers and ranchers when it comes to thinking about this is a succession planning sort of podcast, but also just the general concept of bringing people, young people, sons, daughters, back into an operation. As I teach classes here at MSU, I frequently would talk to students in general about, hey, here are some of the things that there's no rule of thumb on anything. I'm sure Grant would agree with that, but there is a certain set of common questions and conversations that one should have. Whether it's involved going back to a farm and ranch and being included, or in the case of estate planning, as you started off the broadcast with.
So when we look at that, I think sometimes people maybe bunch in together succession planning, estate planning, and wills and everything, and truly. They do need to be separated and looked at differently. And so, Dr. Brester, I'll start with you. When you're sitting down with a producer or presenting at an agriculture meeting and trying to really maybe open that, and I call it the awkward conversation, because it is an awkward conversation, whether you're sitting down at Thanksgiving dinner or every morning at mom and dad's kitchen table after doing chores. It's an awkward conversation. So, Dr. Brester, how do you open that door? Do we want to call it a door or a Pandora's box? I'm not sure, but yeah. What has that been like over your years of talking with producers?
Awkward. That's the best word. And I come from a farm where these conversations were never happened. And as my older brother got more involved in the farming operation, it became apparent that those conversations need to occur. And so, with especially young people going back to farming and ranching, you're 21, you're 22, it's dads and moms, right? And so, you're going to be a little bit uncomfortable. But I always caution students. I said, look, if you can't have that conversation, are you sure this is the career path you want to take? If the family is unwilling to think about things, Grant, what is our net worth? What is our debt situation? What is our carrying capacity? What is our break-even prices? And what's our net income every year? And is there enough net income there to split with? You might think another son or daughter, they don't cost very much, but just get a family and a spouse involved and some kids. And all of a sudden you have to, one of my favorite stories is with Dean Folkford, who I went to school with, and they farm right up here at Three Forks. And of course the Wheat Montana story. But he said when he went back to the farm, his dad looked at him and said, what are you going to bring here? Because there isn't enough income here for another family. And that was a bit of the genesis of thinking about producing a different kind of wheat, a higher protein wheat product, and eventually getting into the milling and baking industry. So I think that's the start. If that conversation is too awkward to have, then a young person needs to think about, is this the right place for me? So that's where I start from. And Grant, I know you can speak more to this too, but Dwayne Griffith, the longtime extension economist here at Montana State, used to say, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And so a big problem becomes, where are we at? There are low-cost producers, high-cost producers. If we're going to expand this operation, we'd better be a low-cost producer and be able to compete when prices are low. And expansion, of course, depends upon that. So I'll stop there. But those are some of the conversations that I tell my students. And I said, if you don't have those conversations, then you got to live with the outcome. I mean, you can't expect something to change from that point forward. It's going to be like that for a long time.
And Grant, from your perspective, maybe the same line of questioning. When a client comes in and is discussing, how do we have these awkward conversations, or what do I need to bring to the table to talk with mom or dad or my in-laws, or looking at planning this out? I guess what are those baby steps that you suggest people take?
I would agree with Dr. Brester that it really starts with the conversation and what's out there and understanding how did it transition when your parents got in the farm, and certainly that balance of kind of the entitlement, making sure you don't feel like you're entitled to is coming into the next generation of is that you're entitled to something, or that the older generation would consider you as being entitled. But I completely agree that in order for a business relationship to work, everyone has to be transparent, and everyone has to know what's going on, and being able to see what impact or value or ideas have been tried in the past, and maybe we need to retry them again and see if now's the time. And so even just starting the conversation of understanding, like, is there a will, or are there estate planning documents in place? If so, where are they? Like, and understanding some of those conversations can kind of help to break the ice of saying that we don't want you to die anytime soon, but God forbid something does happen. Where do we start? What's the first 5 steps that we need to take in the first month after your passing? What's important to you? Are big questions that I spend with our clients, and understanding what are your goals? What do you envision for the farm or ranch, and how can we then lay in the estate planning aspect of it? So I separate estate planning and succession planning by estate planning being the mechanics, the wills, the trusts, those kinds of things, the asset transfer. How do you do that? Where the succession planning, in my opinion, is growing the next generation, bringing them up in the in your values, traditions, those kinds of things. That's the succession, and how do we make that as smooth as possible?
Well, so gentlemen, as we look at that, I kind of like where Dr. Brester was going with that in his opening comments is, whether it be a son or a daughter wanting to come back or look at it and talk about coming back there. But I guess it always comes down to, is there enough income to add another person to an operation? And I guess, what is the best way to break that down?
Well, I'll start first, Grant, if you don't mind. But first of all, I want to agree absolutely with your comment. We forget, and we try not to think about it. But production agriculture is the 3rd or 4th most dangerous profession in the U.S., been mining, logging, and I think there's something else. But, things happen. And everybody who I know who lives in an area, Lane, you've lived in your area a long time, we've all known of people that have had a farm accident. And I know of 3 or 4 in Yellowstone County, just my little area, So I think that's really important. I think the other part of this then becomes not only income, but also who's going to make decisions? I mean, am I going to be a hired man the whole time? How are we going to title assets? So, when asset starts coming in and you're going to buy something new, are we going to purchase a piece of equipment together, which my brother, when he started working with my dad, made a decision early on to never do that because, buy something on your own, that sort of thing. So it is yours. But those are the kinds of conversations that people, as they are thinking about moving into a new operation, who's going to make the marketing decisions? When are we going to sell cows? How are we going to manage risk? Those kinds of things. So I'll stop with that. But those are the kinds of things, in addition to understanding the financial situation of the operation, which leads right into, is there enough income here? And if there's not, it's sort of my Dean Fulford example. What are we going to do to create that income? And it could be off-farm income. It could be expansion if that's financially feasible. And so those are the kinds of things that I think of when I talk to young people. So I'll let Grant respond.
I would completely agree with that. Is knowing whether there's enough income or not, and just kind of having the conversation of just, this is where we are, and if the opportunity is there, let's talk about it, because some people might interpret that it's not there, and then they decide to pursue other paths, and while quietly in the background, mom and dad are thinking, well, why didn't they come back? It's like, well, they didn't really know, and when a conversation, like when the decision is made to come back to the farm, really being upfront and clear guidelines of, okay, where are we at? Like, what does the next 3 years look like? What decisions, where areas do you want me to grow in? And having a clear plan to kind of refer back to from the very beginning, where day in, day out, you can kind of get down in the weeds and it like just continue operating. Change is hard for everyone. So thinking about bringing other people into the marketing discussions and things like that doesn't necessarily always happen. But if you have a plan of saying, hey, in 6 months, we're going to start participating in marketing together, and then by month 18, that's going to be your responsibility, and that's what we want to do. I think a big step that often gets overlooked is agreeing on the front end, and when we set up an entity or something like that, our biggest thing is we want people to understand, how are you going to get out of this if things don't go right? Yeah. And have had cases where we can't agree to operating agreement provisions. So we kind of come to find out that, like, hey, this partnership is doomed from the start, and probably better not to go down that path. But looking at some of those.
Dr. Brester.
Right. I'm just going to follow along with you. I always think of this as, suppose that Grant and I wanted to go in partnership and own a retail store down here in the mall. What are the kinds of questions we'd ask each other? What's our investment? We'd have a partnership agreement. We would have an exit strategy in a partnership agreement, that if this is not going to work, we're going to go our separate ways. So that's critically important in these discussions, to think of it in that business partnership. And it's hard to do with family. I get that. I've been through that myself. But those are the kinds of things that can really solve some problems. And by the way, you might decide as that young person coming back that, this isn't going to work, or at least it's not going to work now. It may work later, but it's not going to work now. That's a really important thing to learn. And Grant, you mentioned, 3 to 5 years. Well, in those kinds of discussions, it's pretty easy right now to think about almost $3 calves. Well, for many of these operations, there's going to be enough income if we have $3 calves, but we won't forever. And this is, as an economist, I do talk with people about, if you're thinking about expansion, if you're thinking about the next 10 years, what price of calves or wheat or whatever else you're growing should you be thinking about? And really, you really want to look at about some kind of a longer term average, maybe a 10-year, the past 10 years or something like that. The reason is markets function. And when prices are high, producers produce more. That's what markets do. That's the beauty of markets. Nobody tells anybody to put more acres in or expand their cow herd. The invisible hand does that. And as a result, when more animals, more grain ends up in the market, prices decline. And of course, the converse is true when prices are low, although it's harder to accept it when prices are low, that things will eventually get better. So that's a really important aspect, that markets work that way. So using the lowest price or the highest price you've seen in the last 10 years isn't a good long-term projection. It's going to be, and by the way, I'll just real quickly add, if you can't make a living at this longer term average price, I don't care if it's 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, whatever. I mean, it sort of trends itself out. If you can't make a living at the long run average price, then you're a high cost producer, because there's enough people who can. Otherwise, that long run average price would be higher because of the entry and exit, meaning the expansion and the contraction. of production. So you need to know your costs. Grant, you mentioned it before as well. And then you need to kind of compare that to, not kind of, but you need to compare that to what has the long run price of calves been in the last, call it 10, 12, 15 years. And that gives you some idea then about, can we be larger? Can we produce the income that when can we survive those years where prices will be low? That's just what markets do, especially in commodity markets, where essentially anybody can raise wheat. I mean, a barley farmer can produce wheat. They know how to do that, right? And so those are the kind of economic aspects that I like to visit with, and of which I can bore people for many, many hours, actually, if you wanted me to, but I'll stop there.
Grant, do you have anything to add there?
I would agree. I think looking at a realistic long range average and making it look like it, and then test it in the bad years and saying, okay, can we survive a couple of years? Because the most valuable asset that we have is our family relationships, and we can, if we things will be great when market prices are up, but when they're in the tank and we're struggling and wondering how things we're going to make payroll, that's where family relationships get tested, and making sure that you have a clear picture and thought and belief that, hey, we can make it through the bad times, and not turn to conflict and lose those family relationships.
So, maybe expanding upon that, really looking at that long run average price, whether that's for the livestock industry or the cropping end of things. And obviously, sometimes you can diversify a little more in a cropping situation. We've seen over the past few decades more pulse crops come onto the market, and we've seen pulse crop markets go down the tubes too, but they're firming up a little bit here. But, I think of hemp. Hemp was going to be the savior of Montana agriculture 2-3 years ago. And I'm not downplaying it, but it didn't, the prices didn't occur quite as fast as a lot of folks thought. We are seeing a lot of folks, especially during the pandemic, jump into that direct to consumer model for beef or pork. I have seen people exit that market just because when beef prices at the grocery store come down, that impacts them a little bit, and that's unfortunate. And I want to see people succeed in that place. But when we're looking at maybe adding a different value chain into an operation, I guess, how do you caution folks when you're planning that? How do you put that into that long run average price, but not be dependent on, because I think of hemp. If you were going to be, we're going to make $2 million in hemp and include that in the price, that really didn't pan out, I guess. So what are the pros, the caution when we're looking at these conversations of adding more value to your operation to bring one or two families back to that farm?
I can start, Grant. When one of the truisms in economics, and it doesn't have to do with markets or anything else, it has to do with human behavior. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. And so if you see this opportunity, you have to ask yourself, why does it exist? How long will it exist? And more importantly, how much risk is being added in that process? Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do these things. It means that you need to carefully evaluate. There's a profit opportunity. Recognize that it likely will be, if it's a commodity, relatively short-lived. But then that's when you have to start thinking about, well, wait a minute, am I good at this? Is this something I'd be really good at? Would I be good at spending my weekends at a farmer's market? I'll tell you one person right now who wouldn't be, and it's the guy with his hand up. I mean, I'd rather have a paper cut in my eye than sit there all day and try to sell something to people. I mean, I just can't deal with this. And so, do you have the skill set? Do you have the entrepreneurial skill set? I always use my buddy Dean Volkford. He'd sell ice to Eskimos. That's fantastic. I don't have that skill set. Of course, he rode bulls when he was in college too. I didn't have that skill set either, or lack of mental acumen, whatever it might be. But and so you have to match your skill set with these kinds of activities, and plenty of people can do it, as you mentioned, and others can't. I always worry about the risk component, the risk of of moving one's competitive advantage, one's focus from doing something really well to starting something new. There's always a learning curve, and it often takes away from your primary mode of operation that maybe you've been around 100 years in your family if you're raising calves in Montana. There's nothing wrong with these things as long as one evaluates them completely. And Grant, I'm sure that you've worked with some people who have done these both successfully and unsuccessfully.
Absolutely. The financial models and projections with the variables that go into it, you can have them tell you whatever you want them to tell you if you're not realistic. And so I completely echo of making sure that you're in a spot that you understand your expertise is going to bode well, and knowing that the risk could be there and jeopardize your core business. That's the you got to make sure that you're floating the main boat and making sure that and then the opportunities can shoot off of that. So.
Well, and so looking at, obviously creating more revenue and whatnot too, it's really hard to do if that ranch is paying taxes when someone passes away, or maybe the family business isn't set up in the appropriate type of LLC or S corp or whatever that might be. Grant, I'll maybe center this more for you to start with. When you're sitting down with a client that, maybe has had an existing business model for 30, 40 years and the kids want to come back and be a part of it, where are we looking at restructuring that business or becoming that we all know how easy it is to create an LLC, I think S corps are probably the best tax model currently to probably be in to save a little bit of tax money. I guess let's talk about the benefits of just being ready to go and have these conversations and working with someone like you at Pinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of great vehicles, LLCs, partnerships, general partnerships, S corporations, and understanding what is going to be best is a case by case. So one of the things that right off the top is first consideration is understanding, is that this new entity going to impact your farm program payment limitations, and do you need more than one limitation or things like that? Because as soon as you add liability protection to an entity, that caps your payment limitation to that entity. No matter if you have 100 individuals that would qualify underneath that, you're still limited to that one payment limitation. So sometimes in ag, we see a general partnership structure for USDA type payment qualifications, which general partnerships are not a great thing for liability, or they don't provide any liability protection, which isn't a great thing. But in farming, that it's understanding what payment limitations are there, and so that would be one, is for the operations of understanding what qualifications would look like, and two is being able to segregate your valuable assets, so land, from your more inherently risky assets. So having a land entity helps from a self-employment tax per se savings as well. So as you run your Schedule F, you're subject to self-employment taxes, which is about 15%. So that's the benefit from the S corporations. They can help mitigate the self-employment taxes. But by realizing land rental or self-rental income, that income is not subject to self-employment taxes. So that can be one strategy to get a little bit of best of both worlds from that perspective. So I'll pause there, and Dr. Brester, any things that you would add into that?
I just made some notes, Grant, because I didn't realize this payment limitation would be important. Of course, it would if the operation certainly is large enough, as many are in the state. In thinking about that process of transferring to, there's been a lot of commentators in recent years say, well, farmers just never let go. They farm forever, and there's a couple of reasons for that more recently, technological change being one. I mean, running a combine is much easier today than when I was a kid. I'm even allowed to do it because, in the old days you had to kind of be, out in the open, and so you can operate equipment longer. You can do some things at an older age because there's less physical activity involved. That's one reason. But the second reason, and Grant, you may want to respond to this, is capital gains taxes. A farmer, if you've got somebody that you're going to eventually give the place to, bequest to, selling it makes no sense because of the capital gains taxes on many of these things. So one reason that we've had, if you look at the Census of Agriculture, it's very clear the average age of producers has certainly increased. And I think it's probably for both of those reasons, some on technological change, but some of it simply, if I die and we give the place somebody, we get a stepped up basis for that new entity. And then if they want to sell it, they've avoided those capital gains taxes at that point. And Grant, do you run into that a fair bit? Have you seen that sort of activity of sort of waiting? I hate to say this, waiting till you die, but in reality, that we all going to do that sometime. Do you see that in your operation, in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Farmers and ranchers tax is a very bad word, and so oftentimes we just build this deferral that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and if the day comes like it's time to hang it up, you can't from tax perspective, and so that the waiting till you're passing and getting that step up in basis, and if you're structured in the right entity, that will step up the basis in your equipment and everything that in theory can be sold income tax free, and so. The genesis of that was that with the estate tax exemption being so low, and historically was the step up in basis was to mitigate so you don't get double taxed upon a death, and so the step up in basis was something that President Biden campaigned on. It's been in the Green Book proposal for several presidencies, and understanding how do we eliminate this tax loophole for the rich. And it only impacts the right of having. So that is something is still a great tool that's there, but there's some uncertainty with our national debt load and everything of what revenue generators are going to go away, and the step up in basis and the estate tax are a couple that can generate.
Grant, with if that went away, I would suspect that accountants and attorneys will be very busy on transferring a lot of these operations into maybe a subchapter S or a subchapter C, something where it never gets sold, right? I mean, there's always there's this continuous. Would you anticipate that happening? That many of these operations would have to go that route, or would that route work? Let me just start there.
Yeah. Potentially the S corporation or C corporations can have some places. Something that we've seen work in transitioning operations prior to passing is the utilizing installment sales. And so selling. So I would tell you my operation on an installment sale, and I recognize the income from that sale in the years that you pay me principal on that note. And so that helps us avoid the peaks of income tax brackets of if we can stay at the 24% tax bracket generally is not, don't love paying tax, but it's not a horrible tax rate to pay at compared to the 37%. So that's one thing that we've utilized, and hey, it's important that we go ahead and transition. We need to transition assets for certain reasons. The installment sale is a great tool to do that.
And Grant, that installment sale, then basically you have the parents carrying the paper
Exactly.
on that, and at least that way the surviving, the parents are still there. The older generation, they have an income source then for the years down the road of that agreement. Is that how that would work?
Yep, that's exactly right. And that the parents would continue to generate revenue from that. And so there's a lot of different variations where we've seen of retire as to mechanisms for retirement is living off the land rental income and the installment sale income, those kinds of things, is because that's a very important piece of it too, is recognizing the work and sweat equity that has gone into running the operation for the last 30, 40 years, and making sure that they're able to live the retirement they want and have the protection unfortunately with nursing home medical care costs anymore, that's can be a significant concern for folks.
Lane, can we switch this up? Can I be the MC for a little while?
No, I'm totally fine with that.
I mean, because
it saves my voice.
This just brings up something you and I had talked about regarding the complexity of having more than that one son, the one daughter, or two of the siblings involved in these transfers. We talked about that a little bit, and if it's a single person coming in, some of these things work. What have you seen, Grant, when there are this transference occurring when there's, let's say, 2 or 3 siblings, maybe 2, only one is still there, who's put, you mentioned sweat equity, that as that person has worked there, has probably kept a lot of these places functioning well. I mean, look, I'm old, right? I don't do the things like I used to do either in terms of productivity, and that's true for farmers and ranchers as well. So you've got this person that's really done a lot, and then all of a sudden we're talking about a 3-way split. What have you found when you've run into these things?
Yeah, it's the phenomenal point, and unfortunately something that families often don't talk about until it's too late sometimes. And so when we're having conversations with families and how do we deal with this, you're exactly right. Having to go to an off-farm heir and say, hey, we need to buy this new piece of equipment, and they kind of know what it is, but it's like, wait a minute, didn't you just buy one of those 3 years ago? And it doesn't click in that conflict, right, of where things are at, and marketing, right, is a very highly, and so no credit is given when marketing is done great, but some criticism comes quick with when it's not done so well, and so what we often like to do is separate the operation, the business lines, and understanding, okay, what's important, who are the key people running those, and what are some of the because there's benefits and risks to being the one owning the operations, and so segregating the land is one thing that we've seen work a lot. There's no perfect answer for anyone or any family, but where we can separate the land is a generational asset that then can earn rental income and then make distributions out, and so that's something that pretty much anyone can be a landowner, and in that point of view. And then we utilize buy-sell agreements. So saying, hey, if everything goes wrong, we've drawn the line, we've set the rules of the sandbox, and if someone wants out, we're going to do it in a manner where the business and the operation can sustain that. And so typically would be setting a sales price that's paid over 20 or 30 years. And then by the end of it, the person selling out, it's like, well, I would get about that much in land rental income, and at the end of the time, still continue to own. And so that's one tool that we've seen utilized by a lot of families. But that where you have operations and decisions, and not saying that it can't happen, but clear guidelines of okay, where does your vote come in, and understanding as a board of director member structure rather than a day-to-day, what are your decision points?
A couple of comments. These things work pretty well when there's profits, but when there's losses, it's easy to give away assets and profits. It's really hard to give away liabilities and losses, and so that creates this other thing. You have these ups and downs. It may not have anything to do with marketing. It's just markets. Do that. That's one thing. The other thing is I listened to a really smart set of farmers up at the grain growers meeting one year. We did a kind of a pre-conference on estate planning, and one of the smartest things I heard, and I just continue to use it without any sort of recognition of the person's name, but which I should do. But he had mentioned something along the lines that fair isn't equal and equal isn't fair. That someone who even under these share arrangements that you've mentioned, you have questions of, well, can I be outvoted on the purchase or the sale of something? But also, even in the case of the land being separated 3 ways, let's say, is it really right to have, a third of the income that's generated from that place, given the risk that's involved in the work and all that sort of stuff? Is that really a right way, a reasonable way to go? And in some cases it is, and in some cases it isn't. I had Grant, I don't know if you've heard of anybody doing this, but at that same conference, one really smart gentleman said, is that we've just taken out, we've done this differently. He said we've got a son or daughter, I don't remember which, who's been completely involved ever since graduating from college, been here 30 years. And what we've decided to do is take out life insurance policies on my wife and I for the other two kids. Each one of us has one. There's a sole beneficiary. When we die, it's whatever number you want to use. You can buy it at any level you want. And said, look, that's what you get, as opposed to thinking about splitting income, selling a piece of property that maybe made the operation work and it won't work afterwards. So I thought that was it's something I never thought about. I thought it was really, really intriguing. And this was, I don't know, probably 15 years ago when I heard this story. Do you see those things happening, Grant?
Yeah, we have that's a great point is having other assets, investments, or certain things that aren't necessarily tied to the farm operation and being utilized to give other children something, and from that, I think that having the conversation and telling the story, right, and I heard somewhere that in the absence of a story, people will make one up, and so if there is no story, then mom and dad are gone, then then that's where conflict is going to blow up. But if it's, hey, this is what's going to happen at my passing, yep, and then it kind of opens the door of if you have an issue with it, come talk to us and we'll tell you more about why. Oftentimes nothing's going to get said, and so even if someone does feel like it's unfair, but I completely agree with you. Fair isn't always equal. We understand that the conversation has been had and can be processed before there's a lot of emotions.
Okay. Grant, I've certainly, even in my own life, my mom, after my dad passed, my mom said, look, here's what we got. I've got three brothers. She said, it's going to be 25% for everybody. That's the story that you're talking about. She said that. When my mom said that, you just said, okay, well, because that's how it was going to be, right? But she said, and so we know, right? We know where we're starting from. We know we're starting from the base, and then we can start saying, well, do you want 25% of selling the place right now, or do you want 25% of the cash rent that we generate, which isn't very much after property taxes and other things? But that's the story that we started from. Not well, I thought mom told me, sort of thing. She just told us all. Said, look, here's what's going to be. I've got a will, as you mentioned, you should have. And she said, this is what we're going to do. In her case, fair, equal was fair. And that's fine. That's her decision. And so that makes things a lot easier when my brothers and I went to see the attorney, probate, take care of all those kinds of things that you're well aware of. The attorney looked at all four of us and said, I want to be a member of your family. No one's arguing about anything. I said, well, we had a story to start from, and that makes a pretty big difference. Although I don't know if he really wants to be a member of my family. But anyway, that was the anecdote he told, at least.
Well, gentlemen, we do need to take a quick commercial break and thank our friends at Bank of the Rockies. We'll be back with this really insightful conversation right after these words.
Bank of the Rockies is the oldest bank in Montana, started in 1883. Bank of the Rockies has been built on a foundation of integrity, consistency, dedication, and respect for the people and communities served. At Bank of the Rockies, many team members grew up on Montana farms and ranches, so they understand the unique challenges and opportunities of the agricultural world. Bank of the Rockies has long supported agricultural community needs and understands the importance of building up the next generation of ag producers. Bank of the Rockies, above and beyond.
Well, as we come back to our conversation today, really talking about being able to pass on a family business, particularly in the farm and ranch sector. And we're joined today by Dr. Gary Brester, Professor Emeritus from Montana State University, and Grant Gattis with Pinion. We are really diving in there of just having plans in place, looking at different options. And Grant, I'm going to maybe put you on the spot a little bit. I did get to hear your one of your coworkers, Kevin Beardley, talk last week at the Montana Stock Growers Association convention. And it kind of caught me off guard when he said, unless you have minors, children under the age of 18, there's really no point in having a will. Having a succession plan is way more important. I guess for our friends that weren't able to attend that meeting in person and hear him directly, I guess what are the key reasons why he would share that with us from your perspective on the CPA front and family planning aspect?
Yeah, so the will is a purely mechanical document that says this asset that mom and dad owned now is transferring to the children. This is how they get it, when they get it, and things like that. And so just a will is a very mechanical document. And so just because you've received a farm or ranch doesn't mean you can operate one. And so the statistics of how many, I think only less than 10% of businesses succeed past the third generation. And so that's something of being able to know of, okay, here's where, how to operate here, the people that we've done business with, or kind of the tribal knowledge that can be passed on through succession plan. That's what's important in keeping an operation together. If you get that call and it's like, okay, I've got to come back and run the farm or ranch, Gary, would you know where to start of how that?
Yeah, it would be very difficult.
And you bring up that third generation aspect of it, and I've always kind of observed that third generation makes it or breaks it. And I don't think that necessarily is on being successful in the countryside. That may have a little bit to do with it. Grandpa, dad, they worked hard, they built it up. Maybe the place is paid off. I do see people that have debt and maybe are expanding or buying in. Maybe have a different view of that when they're in debt and a third generation person has a paid off place, possibly if that's the scenario. But I think the death tax is also or estate tax, if we want to use the correct term of that does play a role in when we're passing these on, and that third generation, by the time they get taxed 3 different generations in a row. I guess, Grant, could you expand upon that? And maybe also, if you can, share how different administrations have used the death tax and changed that, and maybe what the current exemptions are for the death tax and what they've been compared to what they were a few decades ago or just a few years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. A 40% haircut at each generation has a huge detriment, and understanding where does that money come from. It's either selling assets or it's going and refinancing and taking on more debt that you've already paid off once or twice as it is. And so the current exemption for 2024, since we're winding down the last few days of the year here, 2024 is each person can either give away or pass away with $13,610,000 per person. So as a married couple, it's about 27 million that you can pass away before a 40% estate tax is assessed on anything over that. That was changed in 2017 with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and in order to pass it under budget reconciliation, that budget has to be budget neutral. But looking at our national debt, not sure if I totally agree with that, but a lot of the good things that came out of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act are going to start sunsetting, and the estate tax is one of those. So January 1, 2026, the exemption is going to be cut in half. So that would be roughly $7 to $7.5 million based on inflation is where we're looking at that to come in from there. And so we're in a unique time where we have this extra bonus exemption. So if planning is necessary and looks like, hey, we're either right on the cusp of that $14-15 million exemption, or we're over that, or it's not as when the law rolls back, but really when you pass away. And so looking at what growth of land values and other assets.
You're not suggesting that people sort of do some planning on when they want to die based on this, are you? I just want to be clear. I'm making notes here.
Yeah, that's right. With George Steinbrenner passing away in 2010, he's the one who passed away in the year of no estate taxes. But you're exactly right. If you don't want to die for tax purposes, So it would be some current year planning or planning through use of trusts or other things like that that can get assets out.
It's like my dad, whenever he'd have hail insurance and it wouldn't hail, he'd kind of be mad writing the check. He said, I didn't get to use it. I said, you didn't get to use your life insurance either. I don't see you complaining about that, so. and
That's right.
He asked me to go to college. I mean, that asked is a polite word, but so anyway, that's how that all transpired. But
that's funny.
What I found interesting, Grant, the other day when your colleague Kevin was talking at Stock Growers is, when agriculture groups really, the estate tax, death tax, whatever you want to call it, that's a big issue that they always lobby on, that they talk about. Politicians will put in their ads. And what I found so interesting is back in the mid 2000s when Republicans had the votes to actually repeal that death tax, and they didn't do it because Hurricane Katrina hit. I just always find that interesting that politicians still campaign on that. But back in the day, obviously that horrible natural disaster occurred and you had to pay for that damage somehow. But I just kind of snicker now in the last few days since I heard that, because obviously I was in elementary school back when that occurred. But, I guess when we look at that, and you talk about how we know that there's always a sunset and every administration is going to do something different tax wise, or maybe it's not going to be a full repeal, or those sunsets are inevitable depending on who's in power or who's in the White House. You mentioned how we can maybe move things around. And I know we don't have the crystal ball and say what's it going to be in that next tax plan, but as of right now, what are some of those suggestions you make with your clients on how we shuffle land or assets or whatever that might be in the time of when that succession does take place?
Yeah, so the way that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed is going to kind of create a political football for our tax laws. Unfortunately, prior to that, taxes hadn't really changed since 1986. So think of the first Top Gun movie coming out. That's how long it's been since tax law had changed in a substantial way, like it did under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So we don't really know. The one thing that we always talk to our clients about is it's very hard to change something that's been done in the past, and so the grandfather is very real, and so what we like to utilize is what are called intentionally defective irrevocable trusts or spousal lifetime access trusts are mechanisms to get assets outside of your taxable estate for estate tax purposes without changing the income tax consequences or treatment of those. And so that's a vehicle that we can utilize the high exemptions that we have today to get assets outside of the estate, not subject to estate taxes, but still have some flexibility in order to retain cash flow and being able to receive installment notes from that trust that aren't taxable. That's one very powerful tool that we've utilized with clients, and I think is being utilized all over the country right now, is setting up the trust while we have these high exemptions. And in 2021, I think when the first version of Build Back Better came out, was these types of trusts were on the chopping block, and so it was a wildly busy time for us because it was an effective change going forward, rather than a change in the past. And so is that always going to be the case? I don't know, but at least we have something, a little bit of presence of grandfathered working in the forest.
Now, Lane, can I make a quick comment here? Grant and your listeners may not know this, but Lane, I first met Lane when he was in one of my classes. And I just noticed that for some reason he seems to become a little cynical as he's getting older. But then again, I knew him when he was 18, so maybe I guess we all do. So.
Imagine that. Yeah, I thought I was going to be governor when I was like 16, and active in FFA.
I voted for you, but didn't do any good.
Yeah. You wrote my name in, right, with Mickey Mouse. We're coming up on an hour of our conversation today, and of course, brought to you by Bank of the Rockies. These are important conversations, and we're seeing it. We're seeing less farmers and ranchers out in the countryside. States like Montana, we know that folks are coming in. That Yellowstone effect definitely driving the cost of land up, and so many people think that farmers and ranchers are rich. Well, we know a lot of the time we're land rich and cash poor, and just having a plan in place, looking at that future is so vital. So these family operations can stay in business, or maybe a first generation producer can come in and purchase some of these lands. Maybe for, I guess, what would your tip be on that? We are seeing a lot of herds being dispersed right now. I'm really jumping on it. I don't want to make you late for your appointment, Dr. Brester, but
we're okay.
We're seeing a lot of herd dispersions across the West right now. Obviously, record low cattle numbers. We're seeing I was selling cows the other day, dry cows through the ring, getting close to $1,300 after all the fees were paid. I'd rather have that bred cow, but that's ridiculous. I'm glad to have it so I can buy some replacements. But we have these ranchers that are saying these are the highest prices I'm ever going to see. I think it's time we sell the herd, and we've seen a lot of operations do that this fall, and they may do that in the spring too. What are some ways that maybe a ranching operation or a farm could maybe plan to, maybe it's the children are in their 60s or 70s, and mom and dad are now, maybe they passed away, and they're like, we're going to sell this land. We haven't farmed or ranched in a long time. What are some ways that they could structure that grant so that maybe a first generation producer could come in and rent to lease or rent to own or buy that, and because we know that developers love to pay a lot of money for land too.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing to come in and start an operation. Like, is coming in, the capital intensity of agriculture is tremendous, and looking at coming in. So it is going to be based on relationships and seeing if people are willing to give you opportunities. And so, yeah, a lease to own type operation, or where the landowner is willing to carry the note for you. I know there's also some good programs within the FSA office to be looking into and making sure that those are considered, and look for kind of first time farmer monies that can potentially be out there. But yeah, that also there's not going to be a lot of people that are willing to hold that installment note or the lease because you're inheriting the risk of the land, the lessor that's going to come lease or buy your ground. So,
and again, there's probably no tax benefits at this point around for let's say 3 or 4 children that are in their 60s, 70s that, maybe they do want to do this lease to buy. There's probably, is there a tax benefit currently? And if there's not, I think that should be something our legislators work towards and trying to include in a farm bill or a tax code.
Yeah. Great question. There would be, so it would help avoid the spike in income. And so on the capital gains, you reach the 20% capital gain rate at about $650,000 for a married couple, and so staying below that, you're at least at a 15% capital gain rate, which can save some dollars, and so certainly being mindful of that. If you are in that situation where you are selling, I would just make sure that you're taking advantage of farm income averaging, making sure that you can kind of shift some income back and utilize some of the lower brackets in that situation. But looking at those types of operations, also thinking about either doing 1031 exchanges would be another way to diversify out and go into something that provides some mailbox money of and residential or commercial rentals, those kinds of things. So.
Dr. Brester, any questions or expansion on that topic?
I can't expand on the tax implications. I'm so glad Grant's here to do that. But I would say that, as you mentioned, how can this operation be successful down the road? As Grant mentioned, anybody new coming in is very difficult. And that's not typically where farms and ranches, how they've been transferred. I mean, typically it's somebody, even though you see some trophy ranches being bought by people and there's absentee owners, it's a small percentage of what really happens out there, although it does influence local prices, no question about that. But I think I come back to my earlier comment as we finish here and just say, if you are either heading back to that farm or ranch or have been back for 10 years and haven't had these conversations about the financial aspects of the operation, I think you're making it very hard on yourself, A, to be happy down the road, and B, to be successful down the road. I think it's always hard, right? But knowing where the situation is very often enlightening, because there are people who finally just say, people sometimes leave these situations and they simply didn't know where they were at. They said, I don't like, and if they would have known a little bit more about the financial side of things, they may have said, well, that makes sense. Let's just, work towards this goal. But if those conversations can't be had, either because you don't want to initiate them, which I understand that too, or the other side, the parents don't want to talk about it, boy, a person's really got to shake their head and say, is this the world I want to live in for the next 30 years of my life, or do I want a really successful and a highly paid career like being an accountant? I mean, you have to start thinking about other options, because I don't know, I'm old now, and I'm amazed at how fast time goes, and one should enjoy what they're doing, regardless if that's farming and ranching or a diesel mechanic or being a radio personality like Lane. You need to enjoy what you're doing. And boy, when you don't have full information on these things, I think it's very difficult. And I think that makes not only emotionally unhappy, but tears some families apart. And so much of it's needless, and just some hard questions and some conversation starters can be very valuable. And I continually think about the success of those operations, continued success of those operations. Those things need to be done. And the older generation, like me, has to be willing to let go a little bit. I mean, you simply, how do you get new people in? Well, the older generation has to say, I'm going to let you do that. And I have several ranching friends who have done that. And they just grind their teeth about what's going on, but it's different. It doesn't mean it's wrong, And I think those are things that people just have to. Even some of us in our 60s need to grow up once in a while and go, okay, it's different, but that doesn't make it wrong. So that's my summary.
Grant, some concluding thoughts. I think we may have to do another one of these episodes and continue our conversation here down the road. But any last thoughts you would just like to share with our viewers and listeners here today?
Yeah, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, right? And so just starting the conversation, and it's not going to go perfectly no matter how hard you try, and if it's not going the way you want, seek input or from other people, advisors, neighbors, friends, those kinds of things, and have the conversation and realize there are going to be opportunities where you fail, and fail fast, fail forward, and figure out what opportunities there are, and how do we learn from that.
Dr. Brester?
In my experience, the best place to start is talk to mom first. That's usually a pretty good starting point.
Well, that's a good tip there to wrap up our conversation. And again, I really appreciate both of you joining us here today. Dr. Gary Brester, a professor emeritus there with Montana State University's Ag Economics and Economics, and Grant Gattis with Pinion. Again, awkward conversations, but important conversations to keep family ranches and farms in business. And again, a big tip of the hat to Bank of the Rockies for bringing you this conversation. Of course, they are a great egg banker across the state of Montana. And don't forget to stop by their many offices in White Sulphur Springs, Helena, Livingston, Lewistown, Immigrant, Clyde Park, and Bozeman, or give them a ring or visit them online, and they can help you also with all those ag banking needs that you may need to expand, stay in business, and just be profitable out in the countryside. So with that, gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us here on the LaneCast Ag podcast today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Grant.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right, friends, that will do it for today's conversation on the LaneCast Ag podcast. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the LaneCast with Talkin' Ag, Lane Nordland. For more on Lane, check out his Facebook page, Lane Nordland Ag Broadcaster, and NordlandCommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the LaneCast on your Apple or Android devices. We look forward to joining you next time on the LaneCast.